Hey guys, what's up? It's Millions and Millie Books here with another book chat! Today I'm going to talk about the Covenant series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This chat is going to be non-spoilery all the way through. Just to start us off, I absolutely loved this series. If you like romance, if you like action, if you like an intense plot, if you like plot twists, if you like awesome characters, just yes, 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 yes. Yes. If you like fast reads, yes. Also, if you like the Lux series, I would highly suggest picking these up if you enjoyed Jennifer L. Armentrout's other books. I would describe Jennifer L. Armentrout's writing as crack in book form because they're so addicting and you cannot put them down, and when you finish them you are just so happy, and I love them. As an overlook, I would kind of describe this series, or at least the first half, as like if Vampire Academy and Percy Jackson had a baby. But it also has its Jennifer L. Armentrout awesome twist of amazingness. To avoid spoilers, I'm only going to talk about the synopsis of the first book. Half-Blood starts us off with a 17-year-old girl named Alex. Alex lives in a world where there are humans that are descended from the gods. There are peers and there are halves, and halves are half-peer, half-mortal. Our main character, Alex, is a half-blood. In this hierarchy, half-bloods have two choices. They can either go into servitude and serve peers, or they can become a sentinel. Sentinels fight demons, which are these monstrous beings that suck the ether or the godly life out of peers. So they're kind of like a demon vampire-ish mix, kind of. Alex has been training her whole life at this place called the Covenant, which is like her school. However, her mom suddenly removes her from the Covenant and she lives among mortals for a few years. And she doesn't really know why, but her and her mom have been running for a few years prior to the story. But through a turn of events, Alex ends up returning to the Covenant, and that is where the story takes off. Because Alex had been away for 3 years prior to the story, she is behind on her training because she still plans on becoming a sentinel. So to catch her up, she takes part in summer training with a already established sentinel who happens to be a hot peer named Aiden. Unfortunately for Alex, the #1 rule in this hierarchy is that all relationships between peers and halves are forbidden. Dun dun dun! Again, don't know if that was a good synopsis, but I don't like reading from the back of the book. I'm going to do a brief overview for all of the books. Again, Half-Blood is the first novel in the series. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. This book has a lot of build-up and setup and world building, which is great, and it definitely benefits the series in the long run. However, I did like the second half of the series more once we kind of got into the swing of things. This one's plot is quite similar to Vampire Academy. So if you have only read this one and that is a concern for you, I promise this series twists off and is its own thing completely. However, from the first book I could feel the potential of this series. The next book is Peer, and I gave this one 4 stars. This was a great sequel in the series and I enjoyed this continuation of the story. However, this was my least favorite in the series because even though I really enjoyed it, it was quite teen angsty. But all the same, it was really enjoyable. The next novel is Deity, and this one was my favorite in the series. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This was a book where I realized that I really started to love this series. Like, not just, oh, this is good, that this is going to be one of my favorite series. I also think the plot of this novel definitely opened several doors for the rest of the books in the series. Plus, lots of feels here, just feels. And then there is Apollyon, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars as well. This is probably my second favorite in the series. This book was quite unique because I thought it was simultaneously very character driven, yet also very action-y, which is sometimes a hard combination for an author to achieve, but it was great. This was a novel that I realized I started to care for these characters a lot, particularly the side characters, because I think they've really developed into these people that you were rooting for, not just Alex and the other main characters that you cared about in the first books, but the ones that kind of have been along for the ride from the start, but you didn't really know them as people yet, and you got to know them here. This was a novel that you really started to see our main character Alex's character development as well, and again the plot took a completely new direction in this novel. And the final book is Sentinel, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. This was a solid concluding novel. I really enjoyed it, as well as the series overall. Everything was wrapped up really well, which is something that I started to be worried about halfway through the book, but it all not only worked out, but was satisfying. To be honest, the actual ending scared the bejesus out of me, but it was great all the same. I'm really proud of where the story and all of these characters ended up. I loved being on this crazy ride with them throughout all 5 of the books. And it was really hard for me to say goodbye because, again, as I'm going to gush through this entire video, I loved this series. In addition to the 5 books in this series, there are also 2 novellas. There's one called Demon, which I believe is a prequel. It takes place before the first book, Half-Blood. And then there is another novella entitled Elixir, which takes place between Deity and Apollyon, which is between the 3rd and 4th books. However, I have not read either of the novellas because I just got to a certain point in the series where I couldn't put the actual books down and I didn't own the novellas, so I just continued on through the series. If anybody has read the novellas, are they worth my time? Are they really good? Well, I don't want to be disappointed by them because I'm not really a huge novella reader. I don't know why, it's just weird. But if you've read the novellas, please share, because I would love to know if I should have any interest in them. Now I'm going to talk about some stuff kind of as in like the scope of the entire series. First of all, I loved Alex. I loved following her. I loved how this was her story. I couldn't imagine this being told in anybody else's voice. My favorite thing about Alex is that she didn't take shit from anybody, and it was great. And then of course, there's Aiden. Jennifer L. Armentrout writes the most amazing men. I mean, fictional men are my faves, and Jennifer L. Armentrout just dreamboats, total hottie, inside and of course out. I really liked how Aiden kind of had this facade of a tough guy, but he wasn't vanilla. I think a lot of times, at least for me personally, that like the strong, silent types are like all mysterious and hot to everybody else, but I occasionally find them boring. But I didn't feel that way about Aiden. I thought he really had this heart, and I think too often that there's like this strong, tough guy that obviously he's going to have a heart of gold because he's the love interest in the story and the authors want their readers to kind of fawn over him. I liked how with Aiden you really didn't have to dig deep to find his heart. It wasn't hard to figure out that Aiden was a loving person. You got that from like halfway through the first book, all of which was very refreshing. And then there's Seth, which is another side character. He had such a complex storyline to follow. He was so interesting. But Seth really had a unique character arc, which I will not mention because that is spoilery, but anybody who's read it knows. I really liked all of these side characters as well in the series, as I have already mentioned. I believe my favorites are Deacon, which is Aiden's brother, and Marcus, which is Alex's uncle. They are my favorite side characters because I think they really developed into these strong people and influences in our main character's life, and I really enjoyed seeing their interaction and how their relationships affected our core characters. As the series progresses, the Greek mythology aspect of the plot comes into play more and more, so there are gods that become characters, and all of those were very, very, very interesting and quite funny. My cat's upset that I closed my door to film. All of the relationships done in the series were really well developed. Regardless of whether they were romantic or platonic or family oriented, I loved every single one of them and was rooting for them. As for the plot, I thought it was a perfect blend of action and romance. Of course, it's Jennifer L. Armentrout, there's gonna be a little bit of spiciness in there, but these books really were non-stop action as well. It was really intense sometimes. I could not put these books down, particularly the last 3 books. However, in the midst of everything, there are always these cute little moments between our main couple that were so just squeal-worthy and fangirly, and I don't even know how to describe it. Just anybody who loves romance, especially if you like Jennifer L. Armentrout's books, you will not be disappointed. And as I've said before, these books were all addicting and I loved them so much. A strong aspect of this series was the development of everything throughout the books. Our main character, Alex, even acknowledges her own development as the books go on. She's very like, old Alex would have done this, but I am going to do this, which was really great to see. If I'm being honest, I really liked Alex from the start, however she was kind of immature. She's this really feisty person, but something that I really appreciated about her character development is that didn't change. She just learned how to channel this restlessness and make it productive behavior. She never lost her fire. The plot of this series developed into sheer insanity. Cray cray. As I said before, the first book did remind me quite a bit of Vampire Academy. I actually kind of liked it better, but the plot develops into this complete new story of its own, and I've never really read anything like this series. This is a little bit of a spoilery comment, but at the same time it's kind of a given. There is a love triangle towards the beginning of this series, but it's kind of obvious from the synopsis written on the back of the first book what direction it's going to go. However, if you don't really want to know anything about the series going in, it's okay to skip this section. I'm just going to talk about the romance a little bit more. So this love triangle never really was a love triangle, as I said before, just because we all knew. We were all rooting for Alex and Aiden. It was a given, and you felt Alex and Aiden's chemistry from the second that they met. That sounds completely corny, but it just works in Jennifer L. Armentrout's books. Alex and Aiden are one of my new favorite literary couples ever. I love them as individual characters. I love them as a team. I love them together. They make me so happy and fangirly and squealy. Something I really liked about their relationship is how they got their shit together, and when they got their shit together, they were good. They were kosher. Not that they didn't have problems, of course, because that would have been unrealistic. There's so many times with forbidden love where it's all like, hey, we're together now, but we shouldn't be. But we're together now, but we shouldn't be. But then the second that they decided, we're like, hey, I love you, we're gonna do this, they stuck together and they stayed by each other's sides, and I really loved it. They felt like real people. It felt like a real relationship. So comparing the Covenant series to the Lux series, I honestly don't know which one I like better. I thought going into this series that I was like, duh, I'm gonna like the Lux series more. I'm just reading this because I like J-Law and I've heard good things, but I can't imagine liking it any more than Lux. But I might actually like it more. Which is completely unexpected, because with reading the first book I didn't like it as much, because I love the Lux series. I believe I like the side characters a lot more in this series. I felt like I had a better connection with them. I was more of a fan of the plot in this series as well. Damien and Katie are also one of my top literary couples, but Alex and Aiden are right up there with them, and both of the series are such a fun ride. So if you've read this and haven't read Lux, go read Lux, and if you've read Lux and haven't read this, read Covenant, because they're so good. Alright, that is it for this video. It's a lot of fangirling and squealing, and I hope I didn't spoil anything, because I want to talk about some things and express my love, but I also want no spoilers so I can share my love of this series with the people who haven't read it yet. So comment down below if you've read this or are interested, and let's just share our love for Jennifer L. Armentrout. What are some of your favorite Jennifer L. Armentrout books? I have read the complete Lux series and of course the complete Covenant series now. Should I read the novellas? Jennifer L. Armentrout has a lot of books. What are some of your other favorites? I want to know. Comment down below. So this is my first series book chat that I've ever attempted. I think I like it. I don't know. This video is probably really long and I'm going to regret it later. But I hope you enjoyed. This was a book chat of the Covenant series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I loved it. Thank you so much for watching. This is Millions and Million Books. I hope you enjoyed, and read some books. Bye!